Imagine waking up at 2:45 in the morning. Your chest feels like it's on fire. You reach for your phone to call 911, but your hand is too weak to dial. That's exactly what happened to Linda, a 68-year-old grandmother from Ohio. Linda had lived a quiet life in her small suburban home. Retired, content, her days were simple. A hot cup of coffee in the morning, light chores during the day, and quick, easy dinners at night. Frozen pizza, canned soup, a ham sandwich with chips. Convenient, affordable, the kind of food almost every American household relies on. That night felt no different. She was a little tired, maybe some mild indigestion from eating late, but nothing unusual. She turned off the lights, settled into bed, and drifted off to sleep. But just hours later, her world turned upside down. At exactly 2:45 a.m., Linda shot awake with a crushing pain in her chest. It wasn't just discomfort, it was sharp, suffocating, unbearable. Like her heart was being squeezed in a vice. Her pulse thundered, pounding against her ribs. She whispered to herself, "It's just heartburn. Just indigestion. A glass of water will fix it." She pushed herself up, trembling, and staggered toward the kitchen. But the pain spread, radiating into her left shoulder, climbing into her jaw, locking her breath in shallow gasps. Cold sweat soaked her nightgown. She clutched the counter, struggling to stay on her feet. Linda tried to rationalize it. Maybe stress. Maybe anxiety. She remembered reading somewhere that panic attacks could mimic chest pain. "I'll be fine. I'll call my doctor in the morning." But deep down, a terrifying thought cut through. What if this is a heart attack? She looked around her kitchen, the refrigerator humming, the old clock ticking steadily, the familiar glow of the streetlight outside the window. Everything seemed calm, ordinary, unchanged. But inside her body, chaos raged. Her blood pressure spiked like a pressure cooker ready to burst. Her heart pounded furiously, fighting against the invisible force squeezing it tighter and tighter. She reached for her phone on the counter, desperate to dial 911, but her hand shook uncontrollably. Her vision blurred. The numbers swam before her eyes. She couldn't press them. She collapsed onto the floor, gasping, her cheek pressed against the cold linoleum. And here's the cruel truth. Linda didn't know that the real enemy wasn't her age. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't even genetics. The real enemy was hiding in plain sight, in her kitchen. Not poison, not a rare toxin, but something small, ordinary, something she trusted every single day. The sodium packed inside frozen dinners, canned soups, sandwich meats, and even her daily bread. The silent killer most Americans never think twice about. For Linda, it nearly ended her life. For millions of others across the country, it already has. Every year, countless Americans collapse in their own homes, just like Linda did, never realizing what's been slowly raising their blood pressure, straining their hearts and inching them closer to disaster. Linda's body on the kitchen floor, gasping for air, is more than one woman's nightmare. It's a warning, a chilling reminder that this could happen to anyone, to your mother, your father, your spouse, even to you. And it all starts with one tiny habit repeated day after day, hidden inside the foods we think are safe. What if the very foods you trust, the soup in your pantry, the sandwich in your fridge, were slowly breaking your heart from the inside? Linda wasn't alone. Across America, millions of people over 60 live just like her. Retired, independent, surviving on small pensions or Social Security checks, they choose meals that are quick, affordable, and easy. Frozen dinners, canned vegetables, deli meats, instant noodles. Food that doesn't spoil fast, food that doesn't take effort to prepare. It seems harmless, ordinary, part of everyday life. But inside those familiar packages lies a hidden danger. Salt. Not just the salt shaker on the dining table, but the industrial-level sodium crammed into almost every processed food on grocery store shelves. One cup of canned soup can carry more than half the sodium you're supposed to eat in an entire day. A frozen pizza? Double that. Even a slice of bread, something as innocent as toast in the morning, quietly adds to the growing load. And day after day, year after year, the damage builds. Doctors call it the silent killer. Not because you feel it right away, but because you don't. Your body adjusts until one night, like Linda, you wake up with your chest tearing apart. Let's step inside Linda's world again. Weeks before that terrifying night, there were signs, little ones. She noticed her ankles swelling after long days. She brushed it off as just aging. She got dizzy when standing up too quickly. She laughed about it, blaming her glasses. Sometimes her heart raced for no reason. She told herself it was stress. Each symptom was a whisper, a warning. But Linda never heard it, because no one told her these tiny discomforts were red flags, pointing to a heart under siege. In America, this is the trap millions fall into. The food industry hides behind convenience and taste, and we grow up believing salt is harmless, even necessary. Commercials show smiling families eating canned soup on cold winter nights. Ads celebrate frozen pizzas as fun, easy family dinners. No one mentions the heart failure, the strokes, the deaths linked to the sodium hidden inside. And when disaster strikes, like it did for Linda at 2:45 a.m., it feels sudden, random, cruel. But the truth is, it was years in the making. Imagine this. Every time Linda sprinkled salt on her eggs, every time she microwaved a frozen dinner, her blood pressure ticked up, little by little. It wasn't enough to notice in a day, but over months, over years, her arteries stiffened. Her heart grew tired, overworked, until finally that night it snapped under the pressure. Here's the scariest part. Linda thought she was doing okay. She wasn't overweight. She walked her dog every morning. She didn't smoke. She wasn't reckless. By all appearances, she was healthy for her age, but the sodium didn't care. And just like Linda, many Americans are walking around right now with the same ticking time bomb inside them. Every year, high blood pressure and heart disease linked to excess sodium kill more Americans than car accidents, shootings, and natural disasters combined. Yet it rarely makes the headlines, because it doesn't happen with explosions or crashes. It happens quietly, in kitchens, in bedrooms, on living room floors, when no one's watching. For Linda, the moment she collapsed on that kitchen floor felt like the end. But in truth, it was only the beginning of a fight to survive, to recover, and to finally understand the hidden enemy that almost killed her. Imagine your heart fighting for its life, while you lie helpless, unable to call for help. Linda's body crumpled on the cold linoleum floor. The kitchen light flickered above her, casting harsh shadows on the cabinets. Her chest felt like it was being crushed by an invisible weight. Each breath was a battle. By sheer will, she clawed at the floor, dragging herself toward the phone she had dropped. But her strength was gone. Darkness closed in. At 2:51 a.m., fate intervened. Her neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, a retired firefighter, happened to wake up for a glass of water. Through the thin walls, he heard the faintest thud and a low groan. He knew something was wrong. Seconds later, he was pounding on Linda's door. No answer. Instinct took over. He forced it open and found her collapsed on the floor, lips pale, sweat soaking her nightgown. He grabbed the phone and dialed 911. Female, late 60s, chest pain, unconscious. His voice was urgent, clipped. "Send an ambulance now." The minutes that followed felt endless. Linda drifted in and out of consciousness. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, cutting through the quiet suburban street. When the paramedics burst in, they moved with mechanical precision. Oxygen mask over her face, electrodes slapped onto her chest. The monitor beeped, fast, erratic. Blood pressure spiking, 198/110. Possible myocardial infarction, one medic muttered. They lifted her onto the gurney. Every bump down the porch steps sent waves of pain ripping through her body. She wanted to scream but couldn't. Inside the ambulance, red lights pulsed against her face. A medic squeezed her hand. "Stay with us, ma'am. Don't give up." Linda's world blurred. The sirens drowned out her thoughts. Her heart pounded, then faltered. Flatline. The piercing alarm filled the ambulance. "Code blue. Start compressions." The medic's hands pressed hard against her chest, forcing her heart to keep beating. Another jabbed a syringe, epinephrine, into her IV line. The team worked in sync, their voices sharp, controlled, fighting against time. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. The monitor showed only a straight line. Then, a blip, another, a rhythm returned. Weak, but there. She wasn't safe, but she was alive. The ambulance roared toward St. Mary's Hospital. Inside the ER, doctors and nurses swarmed. Fluorescent lights, shouting voices, rolling carts of equipment. A cardiologist leaned over Linda, scanning the monitor. "She's in hypertensive crisis," he said grimly. "Get labs, chest x-ray, and prep for possible cath lab." Hours passed in a blur of IV drips, oxygen masks, and relentless monitoring. Linda floated in and out of awareness, catching fragments of words. Blood pressure, sodium, congestive heart failure. Finally, as dawn broke through the blinds, the doctor sat by her bedside. His face was serious but gentle. "Linda," he said, You had a near-fatal hypertensive emergency. Your heart was under extreme stress. If your neighbor hadn't found you, you might not be here. Her eyes widened. She whispered, "Why? I don't smoke. I'm not overweight. How did this happen?" The doctor sighed. He reached for the chart, flipping to the nutrition notes. It's not your age, and it's not just genetics. It's your diet. Specifically, sodium. Too much salt for too long. Canned soups, frozen meals, deli meats. They've been quietly raising your blood pressure year after year, until your heart couldn't take it anymore. Linda stared at him, stunned. She thought of her freezer stacked with pizzas, her pantry lined with soups and instant noodles. She thought of every quick dinner she'd ever made, every shortcut she believed was harmless. And in that sterile hospital room, under the hum of machines, she realized the real killer wasn't random. It had been sitting in her kitchen all along. What if the same food that nearly killed Linda could be replaced with choices that gave her life back? Morning light filtered softly through the blinds of St. Mary's Hospital. The storm of the night had passed. Machines hummed in quiet rhythm beside Linda's bed, monitors flashing steady lines where chaos once blared. She was alive. Fragile, drained, but alive. When the door opened, her doctor stepped in. This time his face carried no urgency, only a steady calm. He pulled a chair close, leaned in and spoke gently. "Linda, I know last night terrified you, but I need you to hear this. It was a wake-up call. You still have control. You can turn this around." Linda's lips trembled as she whispered, "But how? If salt did this to me, what can I possibly do now?" The doctor folded his hands. His voice remained firm but reassuring. "You don't have to abandon everything you love. What you need is awareness. Salt hides where you least expect it. Canned soup that says healthy. Frozen dinners that look convenient. Bread, cereal, sauces, even the snacks we trust. They're loaded with sodium you never see. But there is another path. Fresh vegetables, lean proteins, herbs and spices instead of salt. Each small shift lowers your blood pressure. Each choice gives your heart a chance to heal." For the first time in hours, something flickered inside Linda. Not fear, not despair, but hope. Her mind drifted to her pantry at home. The rows of soup cans, the frozen pizzas stacked neatly in the freezer, the salty crackers she reached for out of habit. Suddenly, they no longer looked like comfort. They looked like threats, and she realized with startling clarity she could never go back to the way things were. The night before, her life had nearly ended in silence. No siren inside her body, no dramatic warning, just a collapse sudden and brutal. But now, lying in this hospital bed, she saw the truth. The drama of collapse had transformed into the drama of survival, and survival demanded change. Days later, Linda stepped back into her home. The quiet felt heavier now, but she moved with purpose. She didn't unpack her bag. She didn't sit down. She walked straight to her kitchen. She opened the pantry and pulled out the first can of soup. Into a box it went, then another, and another. She cleared the shelves with steady hands. Instant noodles, salty crackers, processed snacks. Into the box, frozen pizzas followed, along with the bread she once thought harmless. Each item gone felt like a step toward freedom. Her neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, tapped on the open door. Watching her pile the foods into boxes, he raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Looks like you're fighting back." Linda turned, sweat on her brow, determination in her eyes. "I almost lost my life in this kitchen. I'm not letting it happen again." Her words carried more than resolve. They carried truth. Because Linda's story is not only Linda's, it is America's. Across the country, millions of kitchens look exactly like hers once did. Rows of cans stacked high. Freezers filled with boxes promising convenience. Shelves lined with foods that whisper comfort but hide danger. Every day, millions of people eat themselves closer to heart failure, stroke, kidney disease. Silently, unknowingly, relentlessly. They don't feel the sodium creeping in. They don't see the pressure building in their arteries. Until one day they collapse just like Linda. But here's the truth. Survival doesn't require miracles. It doesn't require expensive pills or exotic diets. It requires awareness. It requires daily choices. Choosing the fresh tomato over the canned soup, the grilled chicken over the frozen dinner, lemon, garlic, and herbs instead of another shake of salt. Change doesn't begin in a hospital bed. It begins in a grocery store aisle. It begins at the kitchen counter. It begins with awareness that the silent enemy lives in plain sight. Linda's survival was not luck. It was a second chance. And the same chance exists for everyone hearing her story right now. If you've ever brushed off dizziness as just fatigue, if you've ignored swollen ankles, blaming age, if you've laughed off the headaches, the shortness of breath, the racing pulse, remember Linda. It wasn't age, it wasn't stress, it was salt, and she only survived because someone heard her fall. But what if no one is there when it happens to you? You don't have to wait for collapse to make a change. You don't have to gamble with silence. If you want to avoid Linda's mistake, start today. Walk into your kitchen. Read the labels you've ignored. Notice the sodium hiding in plain sight. Cut it back. Replace one processed meal with something fresh. Replace one salty snack with fruit, nuts, or vegetables. It may feel small. It may feel trivial. But that single choice could be the difference between tomorrow's heartbeat and tomorrow's silence. Because the truth is simple. Every heartbeat matters. Every single one. Remember the night Linda collapsed on her kitchen floor. That moment could have been her last. It could have been the end of her story, but it wasn't. Today she walks her dog down the same street she once feared she would never see again. She laughs with her grandchildren, each giggle reminding her why she fought back. She drinks her morning coffee not with dread, but with gratitude. Her life is proof that it is never too late to fight back. Proof that awareness can rewrite endings. Proof that survival can transform into strength. And the question is no longer whether Linda will survive. The question is whether you will choose survival before it's too late. Your story is being written right now. In your pantry, in your fridge, on your plate. Will it end with silence on a kitchen floor, or with a heartbeat strong enough to carry you into tomorrow? The choice is yours. Sometimes the smallest choices decide the biggest outcomes. Linda never imagined her story would begin with something so ordinary. A simple dinner, a bowl of canned soup, slice of frozen pizza, a sandwich thrown together at the end of a long day. These were not indulgences, not luxuries, just everyday meals. Cheap, fast, familiar, but night after night, year after year, they carried a secret. A hidden weight pressing silently against her heart. Sodium, not in pinches but in floods. Not the salt shaker she could see, but the industrial salt she could not. That invisible flood pushed her blood pressure higher. It stiffened her arteries. It wore down her heart. Until, one quiet night in Ohio, it nearly ended her life. Her collapse on the kitchen floor was not random. It was not bad luck. It was the final act in a long, silent story, written by choices she thought were harmless. And yet, that moment became a turning point. Linda survived. She woke up in a hospital bed, weak but breathing. She heard the doctor's words. It wasn't your age. It wasn't genetics. It was salt. And she understood maybe for the first time that survival was not enough. Change was required. Back home, her first act was not rest. It was rebellion. She walked into her kitchen, opened her pantry, and began to clear it shelf by shelf. Soups into a box, crackers into a bag, frozen dinners out of the freezer. Foods she once trusted now looked like enemies. For the first time she saw the labels. Numbers she had ignored suddenly screamed at her. 800 milligrams, 1200 milligrams, more than an entire day's worth in a single serving. She realized how blind she had been, and how close blindness had brought her to death. But awareness is power, and with power comes choice. Linda began to cook differently. Fresh vegetables replaced cans. Herbs and spices replaced salt. She tried garlic, basil, paprika, lemon juice. Flavors she had once overlooked now gave life to her meals. She discovered food could be rich, satisfying, and healing at the same time. The swelling in her ankles lessened. Her blood pressure lowered. She breathed easier, walked longer, laughed louder. Every meal became proof that survival could turn into strength. Linda's story is not rare. It is not special. It is a mirror, reflecting millions of kitchens across America. Pantries stacked with boxes, freezers packed with frozen dinners, shelves lined with cans. Millions of lives quietly walking the same path Linda walked, unaware of the cliff waiting ahead. But her story is also proof that the path can change. High blood pressure, heart failure, stroke. They are not punishments of age. They are signals, warnings, red lights flashing before disaster. And unlike disasters that strike without notice, these can be prevented. These can be fought. Linda's survival was not a miracle. It was a second chance. And second chances are not for her alone. They are for anyone willing to look at their plate and see the truth, because every meal is a choice. Every bite is a decision, and those decisions write the story of your future. So remember Linda, her collapse on the kitchen floor, her neighbor's frantic call, the ambulance lights cutting through the night. Remember her awakening, not just in the hospital, but in her own kitchen, when she finally saw the enemy for what it was. Salt is small, but its power is massive. It can steal your heartbeat or it can remind you to protect it. If Linda's story opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Hit like, share this video with someone you love, and subscribe to Vital Health Tales for more life-saving stories. And in the comments, tell us, what hidden danger in your own kitchen surprised you the most? Today you have the same chance Linda had, the chance to see clearly, to choose wisely, to protect your tomorrow, because tomorrow's heartbeat depends on today's decision.